Hello dear students, welcome back to the chemistry class. In today's session I am going to teach you about the last concept of electrochemistry, that is corrosion. What is meant by this corrosion? Corrosion is nothing but when the metals are exposed to the atmosphere, because in the daily life, in the regular life, we have seen the rusting of iron. When iron nail, when it reacts with the air, particularly moisture, which forms a rust, brown, reddish, brown colored, undesirable compounds is formed on that, right? So usually when the metals are exposed to the atmosphere or environment, which reacts with that environment and which forms an undesirable compounds, particularly its oxides. Any metal, particularly active metals, not less active metals like silver, gold, platinum, these do not undergoing atmospheric electrochemical phenomena. That means which do not undergo rusting or corrosion process. Active metals, when it exposed to the air at atmosphere, which undergo electrochemical phenomenon in the presence of moisture, carbon dioxide or oxygen, and which forms an undesirable compounds, particularly what we can call its oxide. This process or phenomena is known as corrosion. Simple definition: when metals exposed to the atmosphere or environment which forms undesirable compounds, particularly its oxide, this process is known as corrosion, and particularly in case of iron, this corrosion is known as rusting. This corrosion is known as rusting in case of iron. And we are going to discuss about the rusting of iron. Rusting of iron is an electrochemical phenomenon. What are the factors affecting on this corrosion? What is the mechanism of rusting of iron? उसके बारे में हमको स्टडी करना है यहाँ पर. So let's move to this rusting of iron. So rusting means what? Rusting means it is a corrosion process. Corrosion, the deterioration of metal, the decay of metal when it reacting with the atmosphere. This process, उसको हम corrosion बोलते हैं, because in this process some undesirable compounds are produced. So here I am particularly this corrosion in case of iron is known as rusting, and what the undesirable compound formed in this case, that is known as rust. And its particular chemical formula is Fe2O3 into XH2O. Rust. Chemically it is known as ferric oxide, hydrated ferric oxide. Chemically, rust is nothing but hydrated ferric oxide is known as rust. Reddish brown colored product, undesirable compounds जो फॉर्म है. अभी ये आयरन का प्रोडक्ट रहता है, वो आप देख सकते हो, पुराना, बहुत पुराना रहता है, देखो रस्ट हो रहता है. उसको आप थोड़ा टच किया तो ऊपर रेडिश ब्राउन कलर का पाउडर जैसे मिलेगा आपको, वो है रस्ट. दैट मींस अनडिजायरेबल कंपाउंड. ऑक्साइड रहता है, फेरिक ऑक्साइड इनटू H2O. ये जो प्रोसेस है यहाँ पर रस्टिंग है. एंड दिस प्रोसेस ऑफ corrosion, it depends upon some of the factors. यूजुअली आप देख सकते हैं कुछ नया आयरन मेटल है, न्यू iron piece, which do not undergo rust easily, whereas the old one, the impure one, if it containing some impurity, or it is when it is dipped in the salt solution or some moisture content at variable temperatures, the corrosion process, the corrosion or the rusting process may vary. Cold water है, dry air तो usually or when iron is kept in a vacuum which do not undergo rusting. Whereas if it is placed in water, it undergo rusting. रस्ट हो जाएगा वो आयरन पीस. क्योंकि 10th क्लास में आप इसके बारे में भी स्टडी किया होगा, रस्टिंग ऑफ आयरन. एक आयरन पीस लेके कॉपर सल्फेट सोल्यूशन में डाल दिए थे, डिस्प्लेसमेंट रिएक्शन में रिएक्शन किया होगा आपने, डिस्प्लेसमेंट रिएक्शन, लैबोरेटरी में ये भी रिएक्शन सब किया होगा, कॉपर सल्फेट प्लस आयरन नेल. So on the iron nail, a reddish brown colored compound is formed and the color of copper sulfate, blue color, is get disappeared. The reaction, वहां पर क्या है, डिस्प्लेसमेंट रिएक्शंस बोल रहे हैं ऊपर, अनडिजायरेबल सब्सटेंस फॉर्म, रस्ट हुआ है आयरन और रस्टिंग. एंड दिस ये जो है करोजन इज डिपेंड्स अपॉन सम ऑफ द फैक्टर्स. कौन सा फैक्टर्स है? इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन नेचर ऑफ मेटल, nature of metal, or we can call activity of metal. Activity. More reactive metals undergoing corrosion process at very fast rate. वो least reactive रहा तो corrosion process थोड़ा slow रहता है, नहीं तो corrosion process fast है. That is fast one. Whereas the second one is impurity. इम्प्योरिटी ऑफ मेटल. मेटल का इम्प्योरिटीज के बारे में बात करते हैं. अगर वो मेटल प्योर है, प्योर मेटल यूजुअली डू नॉट अंडरगोइंग करोशन, whereas impure metals readily undergoing corrosion. If the metal is pure, which do not undergoing corrosion readily, but in the presence of some electrolyte, in the presence of dissolved carbon dioxide in moisture or water content, where it may undergoing the corrosion process. Impurity of metal, presence of, it depends upon presence of electrolyte. Presence of electrolyte. अगर electrolyte रहा तो the process of undergoing the corrosion is also varies. How? देखिए यहाँ पर एक्टिविटी ज्यादा है तो corrosion का रेट फास्ट है. If impurity, मेटल में कुछ impurities अगर present है, then the corrosion is fast. corrosion क्यों फास्ट होते हैं? वो impurity रहता है, वो भी एक्सप्लेन करेंगे. Presence of electrolyte also enhances the corrosion process. The presence of electrolyte enhances the corrosion process. So these are the factors which are affecting on the corrosion. These are the factors which are affecting on the corrosion. Now we will move to our actual concept, electrochemical phenomenon of rusting. Mechanism of rusting. तो ये पार्ट में आपको सिंपल पॉइंट्स क्या नोट करना है, एक केमिकल फार्मूला ऑफ रस्ट के बारे में नोट करना है, corrosion का डेफिनेशन, इन केस ऑफ आयरन इट इज कॉल्ड रस्टिंग, रस्टिंग का डेफिनेशन, रस्ट का फार्मूला आपको चाहिए. मोreover फैक्टर्स अफेक्टिंग ऑन द corrosion के बारे में क्वेश्चंस ज्यादा नहीं पूछा है अभी तक. तो नेक्स्ट वन इज मैकेनिज्म ऑफ रस्टिंग, दैट इज इलेक्ट्रोकेमिकल फिनोमेनन. ये इलेक्ट्रोकेमिकल फिनोमेनन में उसका रिएक्शंस के बारे में पूछ सकते हैं आपको. Look at this. For example, if this is the surface of an iron metal, एक surface है आयरन का. So if it is a smooth surface, अगर ये smooth surface है, then it do not undergoing rusting easily. If it is a smooth surface, if this is a smooth surface, it do not undergoing a rusting or corrosion process readily. Smooth or pure रहा तो नहीं होते. If suppose rough surface readily undergoing corrosion, थोड़ा rough surface है ऐसा, rough surface means थोड़ा यहाँ पर ऐसा है, smooth नहीं है यहाँ पर. So rough surface which act as an electrolytic cells, ये जो rough surface है, it act as an electrolytic cells. And when this exposed to an atmosphere, atmosphere में moisture content रहता है, moisture content रहता है, उसमें क्या है, water रहता है, oxygen रहता है, carbon dioxide रहता है. If water gets splitted, it forms H++OH minus, right? अगर यही water in the presence of carbon dioxide रहा तो it becomes acidic, that is H2CO3, hydrogen carbonate, H2CO3. This split up to give H plus plus HCO3. This further split up to give H plus plus CO3 2 minus. That means H plus ions are formed in this case also. That is when the metal is exposed. देखिए यहाँ पर. So this is a droplet. A moisture content है. अब देखिए suppose this is a moisture content. Moisture content means ये water है, H2O, dissolved oxygen यहाँ पर है. अगर ये वाटर में कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड डिसॉल्व होगा, that means hydrogen ions are coming. So usually in this case the metal which act as an anode, the metal which act as electrochemical phenomenon में the metal which act as anode, pure metal which act as anode, अगर ये एनोड है then the reaction is this iron undergoing oxidation, this forms Fe plus 2 ions plus 2 electron, ऑक्सीडेशन हुआ है and those 2 electrons यहां पर क्या हुआ Fe iron undergoing oxidation, so ये दो electrons, these 2 electrons which moves towards this electrolytic solution, इलेक्ट्रोलाइटिक सोल्यूशन यहां तक आ गया। तो यहां पर ये दो इलेक्ट्रॉन्स क्या करते हैं, ये एटमॉस्फेरिक ऑक्सीजन को रिड्यूस करते हैं। यहां पर एटमॉस्फेरिक ऑक्सीजन कैथोड पे क्या होगा, कैथोड एटमॉस्फेरिक ऑक्सीजन इन द प्रेजेंस ऑफ H+ which get reduced, एटमॉस्फेरिक ऑक्सीजन क्या हुआ, it get reduced to form H2O, 4 molecules of H plus 4 electrons, it get reduced. So these H plus ions कहां से आया आपको, these H plus ions either produced from water, that is as already I have written some equations, H2O split up हुआ तो आपको H plus plus OH minus आएगा, नहीं तो H2CO3 कार्बनिक एसिड स्प्लिट अप हुआ तो भी आपको H plus plus CO3 2 minus ions. So these H plus in the presence of hydrogen ions which gives the electrons and which oxygen is get reduced. And further these Fe plus 2 ions further undergo oxidation in the presence of air to form Fe plus 3. Ferric oxide convert हो जाएगा। Ferrous ions are converted into ferric and this Fe2O3 ferric ions which gains X molecules of water to form Fe2O3 into X H2O. This is known as rust. Chemically, it is known as a rust. ये हुआ आपका electrochemical phenomenon of rusting of iron. Simple concept है। आयरन सरफेस अगर स्मूथ रहा तो ये प्रोसेस इतना फास्ट नहीं होगा, corrosion process. Rough surface of iron which act as an electrolytic cells, when it exposed to the atmosphere, moisture content में अगर ये रहा तो moisture, ये जो droplet है यहाँ पर water droplet है, तो यहाँ पर iron which act as in the metal surface, metal act as anode which undergoing oxidation, and these 2 electrons which moves to the other part where which helps in the reduction of atmospheric oxygen. एटमॉस्फेरिक ऑक्सीजन को रिड्यूस किया, यहां पर एटमॉस्फेरिक ऑक्सीजन इज रिड्यूस्ड टू वाटर. सो एज वेल एज once if Fe plus 2 ions are formed which further oxidizes to ferric oxide, Fe plus 2 ferrous ions are oxidizes to ferric oxide and this ferric oxides which gains a required number of water to form rust, Fe2O3. Hydrated ferric oxide is known as rust. ये हुआ आपका rusting. Electromechanism of rusting or electrochemical phenomenon of rusting. And एक 2 to 3 points आपको नोट करना पड़ेगा यहाँ पर लास्ट पॉइंट में. How to prevent the rusting? How we are going to prevent the rusting? 4 methods है आपको. Already you have studied regarding the prevention of this corrosion or rusting process. कौन सा है? First one is, you can note these points, prevention of corrosion. First one is barrier protection. Barrier protection methods. Barrier protection. Sacrificial protection. And third one is by using anti-rust. Even electrical method is also there. Electrical or sacrificial methods almost same ही आ जाएगा. By using anti-rust. By using these 3 methods we can prevent the corrosion.